So, how's everybody? Everybody doing well? You know, this is the last time in this phase 1. You guys excited and feel accomplished? Yes. Congratulations to all of you for making it through. I'm very proud of you guys. You came pretty much every time, the last 4 times. Overcoming the corona fears and all of that stuff, right? Good. So today was going to be the last time for this module. It's also the last time for year 1, which means now you are ready to become servants and just take on the service. Is that correct? Do you feel ready? Do you feel like accomplished?
Yes.
It has been a while. How many times in total did we do? About 24? Yeah.
We started in September.
September, yeah.
And it was every week. Except around 36, so we could round down to like 30.
That's good. So today, since it is the end of year 1, we figured we talk a bit about the book that comes at the end of the Bible, called the Book of Revelations. So maybe I'll just a show of hands, who read Revelation recently? How recent?
Last couple of weeks. Yes.
Oh, Abu Ghalamsis, okay. When, how about you? A couple of weeks ago. That's sooner than I have read it, actually. Quite honestly, when I was preparing, I was like, oh, I need to read this, and I was so busy with work last week, I couldn't really get a chance to do it. But I thought, like with anything in any of the books of the Bible, the point here is to give you a high-level introduction, maybe some things to help you think a bit more about it, so that when you read it the next time, hopefully soon, you start looking at it from a different perspective and maybe understanding it from a different perspective. Okay? So the slide deck that we have on the screen today will have some very general information. You can use it as a reference to, as you read, to kind of look at, some of the ideas that the slide shows you. But I wanted to take the opportunity to tell you a little bit about Revelations, the book. So, you know who wrote the book? John, who, the Baptist? Which John? Huh? Sorry? John the Beloved, yeah, one of the 12 disciples. What is special about John? There's something unique between all the disciples about John. He was the only one that was not martyred. And to give you an idea, he wrote this book probably 50 or 60 years after all the other writers wrote the Gospels and after Paul wrote all the epistles. So there has been a long time between when Christ ascended into heaven and all the people wrote the different Gospels. So Matthew, Mark, and Luke, as well as Paul, wrote all the epistles and wrote the Gospels in the first, remember I said about 40 years? Fast forward another 40 years with nothing written until John writes Revelation, and then he writes his Gospel. And he also writes the 3 epistles. So John has 5 books in the Bible, right? The Gospel of John, the Book of Revelation, and 3 epistles that he wrote, short ones. So John, being the last surviving disciple, what do you think his position was at that time? What do you think his position was? It was almost like the Pope of the world at that time. Remember back then, the church was one church. We didn't have Orthodox and Coptic and Protestant and different popes and different leaders. It was just a one church. So John was like the Pope. Everyone in the church knew John. He was the only surviving member of the group that saw Christ and lived with Christ. And, had that close and first-hand experience with Christ. So everybody looked to him when there were problems. And during that era, when he wrote Revelations, he was exiled. You see, the Roman Empire and all the emperors made it their only business to eliminate Christianity. The Roman emperors, one after the other, they used to come and compete with each other. Who's going to eliminate more Christians? This is not funny. During okay. But in reality, they were looking at who can eliminate Christianity, and each one will come after the other and will do more brutal things in order to eliminate Christianity. Okay, so during that time, they exiled John, who is the head of the church. He is the Pope. Imagine if someone in our days today exiled Pope Tawadros and locked him up somewhere. How would we be feeling as the Coptic or Orthodox community? It would be very difficult for us. The head of our church is locked up somewhere. And that's exactly what happened. So they exiled John to this island close to Turkey called Patmos. And John was, of course, very sad. During that time, those 40 years between, the 70 years after Christ, John was about 90-something years old. He was a really old person at the time. There was a lot of not only pressure from the outside of the church, where the Romans were trying to destroy the church and Christianity, but there was also problems within the church itself. People were starting to show up and have wrong beliefs, breaking up the church from the inside. So it was really difficult for him, and his emotional state was not a happy person. Okay? So the nice things about the book of Revelations, if you read the Gospel of John, if you read the 3 epistles, he never refers to himself as John. He always says himself the disciple who Christ loved. He would refer to himself like that without writing his name. One big differentiator in the book of Revelations, he actually wrote, I am John. And this is the revelation that I saw, and God told me to write it down. So when you start reading the book of Revelation, right away, you see that message coming across is like, okay, John knows the seriousness of this message. He wants to relay it to us. And at the same time, he also wants to say, there's no fun business here. I'm telling you exactly what I was told to relay the message to you. And he's documenting it. Just like any official, when they send a message to their community, they always have to sign. Sometimes they have a stamp that goes with the letter. That was John's way of, confirming that this message is from him. Okay. The book of Revelation is divided into 4 groups of chapters. And it's interesting because it is a book that when you read it to the end, it doesn't have an ending. It is a beginning, right? Because it ends with, Lord Christ, we're waiting for you. Those who attend Abu Ghalamsis, the name Abu Ghalamsis comes from the word apocalypse. Okay, and that's what John saw. He saw the apocalypse. He saw what will happen at the end of the world. He saw what will happen to the whole human race. But the interesting part about John is he saw phases. So it is, so when God talked to him and sent an angel to guide him and tell him about things that he was seeing and explaining it to him, he wrote it to us, and it is a prophecy. So it's the only prophetic book that was written in the New Testament. Okay? The Old Testament was full of prophecies. A lot of these prophecies were about the coming of the Christ. We talked about that the last couple of times. This book of Revelation is also a prophetic book because it's talking what will happen until the end of time. What's interesting in the book of Revelations, when you read through it, and then you go read the book of Daniel, which was written some 600 years before Christ, or even more than that, you will find some astounding resemblance to some of the things that Daniel saw about the glory of God and what John saw about the glory of God. It's almost like they saw the same thing and they told each other the same thing. One other interesting thing about the book of Revelations, remember or think about it this way. If you see something that You can't quite describe because you have never seen it before. Something out of this world. Some new technology that you have never seen before. Some event or colors that you have never seen in your life before. And you're trying to describe it. How would you describe it? How would you do that? Let's say you heard a voice or a sound of some kind and you can't relate it to anything else that you know. How would you describe it when you're trying to tell it to people? What would you use? Come on, what would you do? You will try to relate it to something that is current and people know. So you always say, I heard a sound. And you see that in John's writing. I heard the sound, it sounded like soldiers marching. Or I heard the sound and it sounded like a lot of a big herd of horses or a big herd of grasshoppers flying. Right? He will always try to explain it against something that they had back then and everybody knew. So that when he tells it to the people, people will go, okay, I can imagine what it looked like. But the reality is a lot of what John saw, he couldn't describe. It was difficult for him to describe. So a lot of it is also very difficult for us to understand. Like even John himself didn't understand everything. There were things that the angel that was guiding him throughout the journey during that revelation explained it to him. And he would tell him, you know, that the lamb you saw is this and that. And the dragon represents this. And the shoria that the priest was carrying in your vision represent that. Some other things, he will tell him, don't try this. It's not for anyone to know. Okay? Which confirms some of the things that Christ told us. Christ, when he was on earth, he said, it's not for you to know the times. No one will ever know what will happen and when. And you know, many people have come through and read Revelations and read other prophecies and started showing, and you know, the year 2000 is going to be this and that, or the year 1940 is going to be this and that, and then the year 2121 will be this and that. They're trying to relate what they read in the book of Revelations to some event that happened or will happen, but the reality is none of them know. Okay? What's also special about Revelation? What very good about it is that it had a good ending. And it is one book where the good wins over evil. Okay, when you read through Revelations, there is the tribulations that will happen. At the very end is peace, is glory, it is a happy ending. It's almost like God is telling us a message. Yes, there will be difficulties, but at the end, there will be the good news. Humanity will be able to enter into the kingdom of heaven. One of the things that St. Paul said in his epistles, right, because you know St. Paul also had visions and he wrote about them in one of his epistles. He said, I saw what an eye has never seen before, and I heard what an ear has never heard before, so he couldn't really explain it in words. But that tells us that these people, when they saw the visions, they saw something that's very unique, that's not easy to explain to other people. So we talked about the vision that John was told not to write. There's a lot of symbols. A lot of symbols is used in the book of Revelations. And those symbols, they refer to different things. The interesting part is many fathers of the church kind of interpreted the Revelations in different ways and different times, and they all agree on certain things. So we'll go through some of them today so that you can get an understanding. What is very interesting about the book of Revelations is our church, the Coptic church, takes a lot of its traditions from the book of Revelations. Okay? Priesthood is mentioned in the book of Revelations. So that means God, when God was showing John things that he wanted him to tell back to the people and write it down for the next generations to read, he showed him things that, you know, he explained to us. Priesthood. He showed him people holding incense and praising. So when someone comes to us, like, why are you using this incense? I mean, what's the representation of this? Well, the church wanted to pick things that was mentioned in the Bible to keep heaven bring heaven as close as possible to us. Okay, one of the things that was mentioned is all the praises, right? Where does Thok Tati Gom comes from?
The end of, or not the end of, it's like the Revelation.
It is in the book of Revelations. Thok Tati Gom came from the book of Revelations. The praises came from the book of Revelations. Okay. Okay, so let's see some of the things that's mentioned here. Does this work? Let's see. Now I can see it here. All right. A lot of numbers in the book of Revelations. And numbers, many of the fathers of the church agree about the numbers. The number 7 always represents something that is complete from beginning to end. Something that starts and ends. So you'll see the number 7 used quite a bit in the book of Revelations. By the way, the goal of today's, during this half hour, is not to explain to you the whole book of Revelation, because I need a lot of explaining myself, but to give you some areas that you keep in your mind when next time you're reading the book of Revelations. Maybe those will trigger some ideas and maybe some research points. Okay? Many people, just like they memorize Psalms, they actually memorize the book of Revelations. That's how important it is for the church. Okay? So, the number 7. There are 7 churches mentioned. There are 7 seals that were mentioned at one part. There were 7 trumpets that sounded at different times in John's vision. And there were 7 bowls of plagues that were also mentioned. And the fathers of the church say something interesting. 7 churches doesn't necessarily mean the quantity of 7 churches, but it could mean churches over different generations. The church of the very early times, the medieval times, church of nowadays, the next church. That could be one meaning to it. So it doesn't mean always a count, it could mean eras. The 7 trumpets that issued warning to the people. Why 7? Okay, it's representing God is giving people enough and complete warning and opportunity to repent. Okay, so when you're reading these numbers, don't try to just see them as numbers only. Think about them as what do they really mean. Okay, the 7 bowls that contain the wrath of God or the plagues. These doesn't necessarily mean 7 specific plagues, but it could mean 7 eras, right? That will come on humanity with different tribulations. And it's all meant for humanity to start realizing we are not doing the right thing, we need to fix ourselves, we need to correct our path, we need to get back to God, we need to repent. All of these numbers mean something, right? The number 3 is mentioned quite a bit. One of the things that come in 3 is evil and how it shows in the book of Revelation. You have one dragon and 2 beasts that are mentioned in different times. And you'll notice John, as he explaining them, he will say, I saw the beast, and he will try to explain the color, he will try to explain how many horns it had, and each one of these numbers represents something. When you start reading about in the descriptions, you will see a lot of resemblance between these evil beasts that showed up and some of the kingdom that came and went during the humanity so far. You know how like the Roman Empire came and the Greek Empire came and the Ottoman Empire came, and before that the Babylonian and the Syrian Empire came and they destroyed and killed and they went away. All of these are eras that happened to humanity. The whole story, though, about Revelation is, my people, be warned. Okay? The people who call on me, be warned that these tribulations are coming, and it's all in order for it to turn humanity around and get them to realize that something is wrong and they have to go back to God instead of following their sinful way and the way of the devil. Okay, what else? So we have in the book of Revelation the book that was written with 7 seals on it. You know, kings, when they used to write messages in the old days, they used to write them, roll it, and they would use some kind of a wax to seal it so that no one can open it other than the person that the message is intended for. So when they get the message and they have the seals, they have to open one by one. Okay? So there is in chapter 5, they talk about the seals, and every time a seal was opened, first of all, the only person that was able to open it was the lamb that John saw in his vision. And that lamb appeared like he was slaughtered, yet he was not dead. Can you see the reference to Christ here? Right? A lamb, because he's quiet and kind, never fights, but he is the only one that was found worthy to be able to open the seals. And then the seals were opened, and every time a seal was opened, something happened. And people look at this and say, okay, there was 4 horses, right? I can't read this. What does it say here? There's a white horse, then a red horse, then a black horse, and there's a green horse. And these horses refer to eras that happened. Okay, so the white horse represent what? What does it represent? It represents Christ, who conquered and brought salvation to humanity. Then after that came the red horse. The red horse represents blood. It talks more about the era that the church lived during the Roman Empire, where there was a lot of martyrdom. Then there was a black horse, and the black horse represents a black period during the church history. And black is bad, black, something is not good that happened to the church, and it represents the times where there was a lot of breakups happening inside the church. Arius and Nestorius, and these people coming in with different ideology, trying to change the church, and the church starting breaking up and having, their faith shattered or getting, shaken. The pale horse. Some people say the pale horse may represent the Islamic period, because the pale horse, the rider on the pale horse, took over the world and slaughtered everybody in their way, which kind of what happened when Islam was expanding and they took over. Okay, so there were 7 seals. The interesting part is that the last seal is always something good that happened. There's peace at the end. So you'll always see in anything or 7 events, even when he talks about the 7 trumpets, right? He will talk about bad, maybe worse, and then something good at the very end of it, which helps give us hope that yes, there may be tribulations in life, but at the end, there is going to be peace. At the end, there is a kingdom of God. Numbers are quite interesting in the book of Revelation, right? So at one point, John says, I counted 144,000 people that their names was written in the book of life. And people go, that's it? 144,000 out of how many billions that live on earth? Our chance is really slim. But we're not supposed to take the number as it is. It's not truly, 1, 2, 3, 444,000. So people,
Why are all these cryptic numbers?
Because you're not supposed to know.
But then why?
You're supposed to get a message. What's that?
Why tell us?
To make you think, Marina. You need to think. You need to think and research and read. I'm going to read for you a portion of the book of Revelation so you see. What's interesting is when you see that portion that he wrote, that the 144,000 were mentioned, it reads this. It says, and that's in chapter 7. He says, after these things I looked, that's John saying, and behold, a great multitude which no one could number, all of the nations, tribes, peoples, tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palm branches in their hands. So it wasn't really only 144,000. It is a people that no one could count. Those are all the humanity across the generations, right? People say the 144 represent 12 times 12. Maybe it's also talking about 12, the New Testament, and then 12 tribes from the Old Testament that were given the promise, right? The 12 tribes of the Jews were given a promise to enter the promised land. And then in the New Testament, 12 disciples carried the message of hope to the rest of humanity. 12 times 12 is 144, right? At the end of the day, all of the numbers are only representation. They're never actual numbers. Then you get the 7 trumpets, which have warnings. And every time a trumpet would sound, something would happen on earth. You know, different plagues that happen, but always at the end, the Christ comes. Always at the end, the hope is achieved. I'll go to the next one here. The church and the devil is spoken about in chapter 2, where John talks about a woman, which is represent the church, and clothed with the sun means united with Christ. Can you see the representation that he's seeing? Right? The moon, which is the saints under her feet, she wears a crown of 12 stars, the 12 disciples. So that woman that's mentioned in the book of Revelation represents the church as a collective. And then the devil is trying to fight against the church, of course, because the church is preaching salvation to the people. The devil doesn't want that to continue, because as long as people keep hearing the message of salvation, they will have hope, which means they'll pray to God, which means they will not sin anymore. That's not good business for him. So he has to fight against it. Okay? There is representations of beasts, one that came out of the sea and one that come out of the land. What are these beasts and what do they mean? Right? When they read the descriptions about what these beasts do, you can tell that, or you can relate it to certain things that happened during the Roman Empire that went and took over the world and destroyed in that era. The beast that came out of the sea may represent some new ideology that came and tried to convert people to follow it. Whatever that ideology may be. Some people say it may be atheism. It may be some other religion or a new ideology that is trying to veer people away from God so that they can follow it. And we see this happening. Every now and then there is new ideology that comes out and people start thinking, oh, this is cool, I'm going to read about this and I'm going to learn about this and I'm going to follow this. And they stop believing in God, or they stop believing in, they start losing their faith, essentially. The final warnings are shown in 7 bowls full of the wrath of God. So that's kind of scary. The wrath of God. So God is going to pour wrath on the earth, and every time one of those bowls were dumped on the earth, some kind of plague happened. Right? There were sores that afflicted people. Then there was the sea turned to blood, which means all the water became unusable. Right? The rivers turned to blood. Then the mankind scorched by the sun. I don't know, maybe the ozone layer had a big hole in it, and the UV rays coming started hurting us or hurting humanity. Maybe that's what will happen at some point. Every one of them had a plague. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that for each of us, there is a judgment day. And that judgment day is not necessarily the same day for everybody. Because our time here on earth finishes when our life finishes. So in the book of Revelations, when they talk about, a new heaven and a new earth that started to emerge, and he saw the new Jerusalem, with the streets made of gold and doors made out of diamonds. he's seeing something that he's trying to explain. It is so beautiful that he just can only put it in words of gold and diamond because he didn't know anything else to explain it with. But it's always at the end that we see this happening, and we see the, that improvement in the situation. From all the plagues and all the terrible things that happened, now we see the new earth and the new heaven. So the very important part is really the promise. The book of Revelation is about a promise that God has given us. He's saying, watch out, there will be difficult times, there will be eras of difficulties, but at the end, there is hope waiting for us. At the end, we're going to have an opportunity to go to heaven. But what's important is we stick with our faith to get there. Okay? I wanted to read. Question? I'm going to read for you the first introduction from the book of Revelation here. You guys see that okay? Okay, so it says as this. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants, things which must shortly take place. You read this and you read the word shortly and you go, oh, it's going to happen in a couple of 100 years. It has been, 2,000 years now? We haven't seen a lot of these things happen. Right? We have seen plagues. One was just happening recently. Right? We have seen wars. We have seen tribulations. We have seen financial losses in the markets. We have seen companies that grow and collapse. We have seen all kind of things, right? But it's not the end yet. Is it? Well, we don't know. The reality is we don't know. Okay, and he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. Right? You can see that translation talking about signify means, he's specifically making it significant for him, who bore witness to the word of God and to the testimony of Jesus Christ to all things that he saw. So he is signifying and signing his name and saying, I am John, I saw this, and God gave me this message. And then he tells him this. Listen to this, okay? Blessed is he who reads and those who hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written in it, for the time is near. This is the main message of the book of Revelation. Blessed are those who read. Read means, research, find, understand, ask for wisdom, read the Gospels, read the book, read the Bible, read the scriptures, right? And listen to the words of the prophecy. Now, when someone listens to a prophecy, usually he doesn't understand it from the first time. They have to listen to it again and try to read it and understand it more. That's called research. So it's an obligation on all of us, in order to get this blessing, to read and research and try to learn more. Okay? For the time is near, and that's a message that says, everything is going to come to an end at some point. And the time is near doesn't necessarily mean that these plagues are going to start happening tomorrow or in the next couple of years. It mainly means that each person, we have an end to our time. The time is near for us, and we have to be prepared for it. Okay? So, as you embark onto the life of service that you're preparing for, make sure the book of Revelation becomes a regular read for you, because there's a lot of messages there that are very important for all of us. Okay? And maybe you try to learn it so that you can explain to other people too. Any questions? No questions? You guys are very quiet. Every time I say any questions, like, beep. Yes. نشكر ربنا. Alhamdulillah. I remember those times, Marina. Don't want to go through them again. It's okay. Okay, so I guess the quiz, we only put it today for this time, for last time. امبارح؟ اوكي انا حطيته النهارده اصلا. اوكي. بجد؟ اوكي انا ما شفتوش. So try to get it done, and the quiz for tonight or this time will be posted. And then hopefully everything stays on track, and in September we get back to continue on with our second year. In the summer.
Wait, so today's the last day done?
Yeah.
For the entire summer? Really?
Yep.
Wow.
You guys don't read the messages.
The first of the 2-year program is done.
Wow.
You guys want a graduation party?
Yeah. Kind of.
Okay, as soon as we're able to gather back in the church. Yes.
Wait,
What's that?
Could you repost the link to the last quiz again?
The very last one?
Yeah, the one that we did last time.
Okay, sure. The quiz for last time. Are you talking about number 3 or number 2?
Number 3,
Yeah, I posted number 3 today on the WhatsApp.
I didn't see it.
Oh, okay, I'll check it out. Sure. Any questions? What do you guys want to do this summer? We need to find something to serve with. Shh. What, you just come here for fun? You want us to choose, or you want to choose for yourself?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Yeah, I don't.
What do you want to do this summer
Like as a friend, or you mean as individually? Yeah.
as an individual?
Oh, okay.
That's usually what the question means.
Entire summer for this. So, I have no fun.
So you want to think about it for the summer?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll prepare a few things for you, I guess.
yeah. When
Okay.
things open up, maybe we can go out.
What's that? Huh? Someone else.